All right, guys. So this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. Just watching my nephew who just turned 10 about a week ago. Just since early on, just dealing with so many of these issues from seizures, all kinds of sensory stuff, just having a hard time learning to read, even though his vocabulary is insane. Just coordination, balance, all those things. And because of a few posts I've had in the last probably month or so, I've had a number of moms that just kind of asked me to just touch base about this stuff and how much of it can be related to airway. And, I think it's important to be clear that I think many of the issues seen here can be impacted by airway issues. And it's not as simple as that when it comes to the human body. I mean, we take environmental toxins and food and pesticides and just mold in the house, and then we take traumatic births and all kinds of other things, and we tend to try to oversimplify things in order to help put people in boxes so that we can then market to those boxes. And I think that's sometimes how we try to oversimplify our medical field so that people knew who to go find and see when there was an issue. And then I think, modern day with social media, it allows people to niche out and sell products specific to different needs or conditions. And I guess the biggest thing I want to talk about, having been in this world for 25 years with strength and conditioning and working with everything from young kids to 85-year-olds, just as it relates to all the things on this list. And so I wanted to work down kind of through this list and just talk about how each of these things can be a symptom of an airway breathing issue. Once again, not saying if you treat these things from an airway perspective that they all go away, but very much so, I feel like all of these items have some type of connection to those that possibly have dysfunctions from a breathing, sleeping, oral posture perspective. And I want to tie in for people like how it's all connected to this one thing, and how fixing this big ticket item can often eliminate a lot of symptoms if it's coming from that place. And my goal with this post is not that I have the answer or the fast pass to all these kids or parents' issues. It's more of like shedding light on, having my mom just be in this world as a teacher, special needs. I mean, she has a master's degree, she used to bring home all kinds of kids, special needs, special ed from, the minute I was literally in diapers. And then just seeing all the kids she's worked with over the years, and then having names and classifications for all this stuff. I mean, it's interesting to see all of that, and then to know what I know today relative to airway, body, brain, sleep, airway, and to just kind of see this list and just have the very first thing off the top for myself most of the time be like, are we checking this box like right off the top? Because the fact that this one thing can impact every one of these categories is something to me that, like, I've read multiple books of some of the best in this field in the last probably 2 years, and No one even talks about it ever. And I'm like, then I have like a mom after a post, a few days ago that's like, yeah, the minute my kid literally fixed their airway and dealt with some basically primitive reflexes, like she went from the diagnosis of autistic to no more issues, no more symptoms. And I just can't help but wonder, like, I think at some point someday, many airway issues are contributing factors to a lot of these symptoms. But then there's going to be those things that are purely, just part of other things that we haven't been able to pull apart yet. And I think it'll be interesting to see that if we treat the airway and breathing perspective, how many things get cleaned up, and then how are we assessing things after we take all the symptoms related to a dysfunctional airway off the table. And with that, I want to start with this list and just kind of work my way through and just explain all these things from an airway, body, breathing perspective, and hopefully just shed some light and talk about these things. The reason I do all this stuff is just if we can ever help just one kid, or if I can ever just get in front of one person that deals with assessment or just education in this world, and we can then help people just start to bring in other tools, other ways of looking at the same problem, and creating like just a better hierarchy of needs, how to approach the issue, and go after bigger ticket items that tend to be the linchpin for a lot of these other symptoms. I think that's just what like getting better as any coach is. I mean, that's been my life as a trainer, is like constantly trying to disprove my current philosophy and just always being open. And I know that's hard in medicine because from my experience, there's just a lot of ego. People don't want to admit that they're wrong, or they want to think that their way is the best way. And I've read a lot of stuff in my life, and I've been in this field a very long time. And the more I read, the more I realize I still don't know. And the only reason you don't know when you start to think you know some stuff is because you're still so far down the totem pole from a learning perspective. Because the way so many of these fields cross paths and affect other parts of the body, especially for specialists that only know their lane and not the surrounding lanes, it's no wonder so many kids just fall through lots of cracks. And this is where I think for myself, I don't make a living off doing this. It's more of I learn because I'm curious and passionate about helping just kids, man. Having been the sick kid my entire life since I was a baby, from colic, hyperactive my entire life, tired, wired, always sick, always had breathing, allergic to everything, autoimmune disease, I mean, you name it. This was my life. So it's like to see this now and then to talk to all these parents that go down this rabbit hole. And for those that treat the airway, and how many countless times I've had parents just be like, yeah, most of my kids' stuff just went away. It's like two different children, literally in the matter of months. From, can't get haircuts, no seams on clothing, just can't be in a loud room. Kid can't sit still, attention, fatigue. And then just to think that like all of a sudden, these kids that just can't make friends, they can't sit still, they have a hard time in class. And then to think that like you can just give someone the ability to have their childhood back and to feel good about just being a kid. And it just makes me think, I had this conversation with a mom the other day who literally, kid, all kinds of GI problems, behavior, fatigue, sleep. And then, this kid was 4.5, and he was expanded. And how, after his expansion, he just told his mom, the other day, he's just like, Mom, I just feel really good inside my body. And it's like, a 4.5-year-old ain't selling anything except for the truth. And, for the mom to be like, that is a big win. That is what it's about as a parent. And I think we owe this to the world to just take a deeper look at how much this stuff is impacting kids today. I think that's a really big deal. So with that, I want to start, just so many kids with sensory issues, and how, we talk about right hemisphere deficiencies, deficit. I think, the first thing is hard time sensing their body. And I see this every day working with just people of all ages. And one of the biggest things I will say is this, okay? If your tongue does not sit up on your palate because it doesn't fit, meaning you're a mouth breather, you're a hybrid breather, you've always got a stuffy nose, your adenoids, tonsils, so the tongue can't stay up there, or it won't fit up there because at some point you've been just mouth breathing long enough. When your tongue can't sit up on the palate, it's like the bulb in the back of a toilet. And when we can't keep it up there, it's like the water keeps running in the back of the toilet. It's like when the bulb gets stuck and the water just keeps running. You got to pull off the top of the toilet, make sure it reseals, and when it does, all of a sudden the pressure builds. It's the same thing in the body. So when I can't keep my tongue on the palate and I can't have negative pressure in my oral cavity, I am robbed of the ability to sense my body through the ground at my feet. So I need negative pressure in the mouth to sense positive pressure at my feet so that I can feel my body underneath me. So another example of this would be if you take one of those wavy things that's like the balloon out in front of a store, right? When your tongue doesn't fit on your palate, it's almost as if the machine is not turned on. So you've just got this flat. And although we're standing on our feet, the inability to have high levels of pressure in our body because we lack the scaffolding and the proper, basically, joint function, and we are not going to have the ability to sense our body because with low levels of pressure, we can't really sense things in space. So straight up, there's number one, okay? Number two, tongue doesn't fit on the palate, okay? So when my tongue sits just behind the front teeth, probably a few millimeters right behind those top teeth, it's called the incisive papilla. It's like a little dot, okay? So that is the home that nature decided for our tongue, okay? When the tongue sits up there, it essentially provides us parasympathetic rebalancing. So we have a nervous system, okay? So we've got basically fight or flight, like we're being chased by a tiger, we're running from danger. That is the sympathetic nervous system. And then we have the parasympathetic. And the way we essentially activate that is by keeping the tongue up, stimulating the parasympathetic by having it on the spot. So this is very important. The other thing is when the tongue sits on the spot and I can keep my mouth closed, I'm nasal breathing. Okay, so when I nasal breathe, I have the ability to slow down my respiration, to keep my system calm. I have the ability to slow down my breath, which gives me the ability to control my mental state. And then I also have the ability to get deep, restful sleep because I'm not mouth breathing. So oftentimes, what I learned from Dr. Avram Gold, probably one of the best sleep docs in the world, New York, is that when we have the inability to stay nasal breathing during sleep, our architecture of our sleep gets hacked. The hacking basically robs us of deep restorative sleep, and essentially many of us are kind of choked out, or essentially we'll get into a deeper level of sleep which is restful, and because we lack the ability to keep breathing because our pipes aren't big enough and the pump's not strong enough to ensure that we keep breathing as the body gets more relaxed, we kick up to a higher level of sleep, which happens all night long. So this is called sleep stage shifting. He calls it alpha delta sleep, where we're essentially getting into better, deeper levels of rest, and then we lack the ability to keep breathing, so we upgrade ourselves into essentially a lower restful sense of sleep. But that allows us to basically deal with danger if we're not as in such a deep slumber, and this is where it gives our body the ability to protect itself at the cost of robbing us of deep restorative sleep. So you take sleep that's less restorative, people essentially being choked out or they stop breathing. What do you think that does to the nervous system? Okay. Then we lack the ability to keep our nervous system balanced all day long because we can't keep the tongue up on the palate, the incisive papilla, which is where we basically, if we thumb suck, that's how we self-soothe. We put a pacifier, that's where it sits, right on that spot, self-soothe. So the self-soothing is going to help rebalance. So we lack the ability there, we lack the ability to get good sleep, and then we lack the ability to control our mental state because we're over breathing, and this tends to just drive all kinds of things in the body, like heart rate, hormones, all these types of things. So you take all those things that are essentially keeping our body more sympathetic, and when we're always fighting danger, we're always on the lookout, we're always running from issues, we're not thinking about food. Therefore, from a digestion perspective, we're gonna have issues because we're never in a calm, peaceful, restorative place to give our body the adequate time and space to digest food. Okay, so this is something we also see. Okay, picky eaters. I read this about sense of smell and different stuff. Think about this, okay? If your only sense of air, okay, is your mouth because you don't breathe through your nose, because your tongue doesn't fit on your palate, your nose is always stuffy, tonsils, adenoids may be swollen, therefore it's hard to move air. Your airway is now this instead of this. Well, if I have to breathe out of my mouth now, which is a lot less efficient, the last thing I want to do is eat foods that require a lot of chewing or things that are harder to chew, because I already have a hard time keeping my mouth closed with my tongue in it, and there's not even food in there. Coupled with the fact that this is now my airway because this is stuffy, the last thing I want is stuff in this already undersized area taking up all the space for long amounts of time. Therefore, I want simple foods, less complexity. And I'm not saying that some of these other things don't contribute, but you probably want stuff out of your airway as soon as possible so you can get back to breathing, because your body's already wound up. And I can't help but think how many of these kids that is a contributing factor. Okay, poor attention. Well, if you're not getting deep restorative sleep, your body's always amped up because you're breathing faster, because you lack the ability to breathe through your nose, which is calming due to the nitric oxide that we're able to pull down. We lack the ability to bring in nitric oxide at much higher levels during sleep, which is like our nature's blood pressure medicine. We're waking up every day. These kids are already wound up because they've been, call it choked out all night, call it they've had labored breathing all night. So their body is already primed, okay? Then they're not waking up feeling rested because they've shifted stages of sleep all night long due to breathing issues. All these things, kids are already tired, they're not focused, they can't calm down, they're wound up, they don't have adequate nutrition because of their digestion issues. Of course these kids can't pay attention. They got 87 things working against them. Okay? Mouth breathers. Okay? Once again, let's call it a mouth breather. Let's call it someone that like maybe they bounce back and forth. If I can't keep my tongue on my palate and I can't stay nasal breathing, every time I breathe out of my mouth versus my nose, it dramatically changes the ability to drive nitric oxide, which pools around the sinuses. I bring it deep down inside the lungs. This is what helps me to essentially get better oxygen to my blood. When this modality is interrupted due to me switching to mouth breathing or the inability to do it well 24/7, I lack the nitric oxide that's necessary to often go inside and basically, one, filter anything coming in and out of my body, right? So if everything's coming in through the mouth, it's like people are sneaking in the back door. When we go through the nose, everything is filtered. The cilia protects it. It basically takes things that shouldn't get in and it stops them at the door. Versus when we are forced to use the tongue as a kickstand and the mouth is our main source of breathing, we default now to a less efficient form of breathing. So we often lose access to our diaphragm, which allows us to breathe more efficiently using the entire rib cage rather than an upper chest breathing that biases how we take air in, how fast we take it in, the volume, how oxygen is utilized. And now all of a sudden, I lack the nitric oxide levels to be able to go in and basically stop pathogens. Okay, so I lack the proper tools to go in and fight these foreign invaders. I also basically, I've got a nervous system that's always running on high. It can't calm itself down. And then I also lack good sleep quality, which is going to essentially mean that every day, not only am I waking up with some level of sympathetic tone on my system, I don't have a way to buffer it because it's not like I can make up for it tonight because last night was a bad night of sleep. Because if every night is the same and it's never restful, that means I don't have a way to recover. So I can't recover from sleep. I have a broken system for cleaning out my immune system. And then my nervous system is overtaxed. No wonder my nervous system blows itself out. And this is where autoimmune stuff comes in. Well, yeah, you can't breathe efficiently. you start to have a sensitized nervous system. We have the inability to essentially deal with things from a normal perspective. And this is where our systems can become hypersensitized to many things. And this is where, once again, a lot of kids with some of these sensory or nervous system issues, they all share these common traits. Okay. Poor muscle tone, especially large postural muscles. Once again, my tongue can't sit on my palate. If it doesn't fit, I can't support the head. The head's a 10-pound bowling ball, okay? So when the tongue doesn't fit and I lack good oral posture, I've lost support for my head. When I can't support the head, my body has to reposture itself. And this is where the human Jenga comes in. By not being able to basically posture itself, everything has to basically get thrown out of normal alignment, which changes the access I have to muscles. This is what I was talking about earlier. I lose access to having high levels of pressure, which ensure I can actually create tension in the muscles. I can sense where those muscles are. I have good activation. All of this is dependent on posture, and overall body posture is often dictated by my ability to sense the ground underneath me, coupled with the ability to support the head. When I can't do that, I'm going to have low muscle tone, bad posture, and this is where oftentimes we have issues with a lot of kids in this world just developing properly from a physical perspective, going on the gait. Okay, so our teeth, basically our mandible, it dictates based on our occlusion and how our TMJ joints work. We walk through our teeth. So we have basically a load balancing system through the teeth. One side's working, the other side's not. Well, when we have malocclusion and the tongue doesn't fit, a lot of these kids, end up losing access to proper movement patterns because essentially the tongue should sit on the palate as we move, and the palate moves basically side to side from like a mandible teeth perspective. When I lose access to the way my teeth load and unload moving side to side, I lose the same thing below. So think about a puppet. The way my mandible moves off of the maxilla and my occlusion and the muscles are how I load and deload based on where my head is, my posture, where my eyes are going. Everything follows from a top-down perspective. There's bottom-up feedback, but oftentimes the mandibular and the AI system going on in the vestibular, the stomatic gnathic all sits right behind the nose in the brain. This is where our internal AI sense of space, breathing, temperature, everything occurs. And when I lack the ability to keep my tongue on the palate and I lack proper occlusion, I lose the ability to load and unload sides of my body because the teeth don't work right. Therefore, everything compensates. And this is where my gait, my balance at the feet, legs starts to be altered, and we have this dysfunctional gait or an odd gait as it results to all these systems can't talk because the top-down intel and balance and muscular systems are not on par to do the job. Okay. And then the last one here is the poor balance, rhythm, and coordination. Okay, so think about this. Your internal AI, think of like if you cut off my nose and you just looked at the skeleton. Okay, so you've basically got the two sides inside the nose, and basically you have the two sides of the maxilla. If you look at it, it looks like an old B-52 bomber. Essentially, the nose of an old school airplane is the same thing as the face. So inside the nose, we have this internal system that measures air quality, what side of the face is higher than the other. And then through our tongue on the roof of the mouth and through our teeth having proper occlusion, this is how through all the receptors in the roots of our teeth, our jaw, our joints of the TMJ, we have this internal AI that runs our system. And when none of that works properly, I got bad intel. So now everything I'm doing in life is predicated on bad information. Therefore, where I think I am in space, I am not. It's some altered version. And this is where, when my TMJ joints, my occlusion, and my upper cervical, my neck, is balanced as a system, those three things are like three old school scales. And when they're balanced in unison, okay, the way my body experiences gravity and where my center of mass is dependent on that being pretty well balanced. When that starts to get off, everything we're taking in from a sensory perspective is off. It's just a matter of how far off and how often it's off. But this is kids trying to build skills off of a bad game of telephone, okay? Now you take that coupled with my eyes and my ears sit on this system right here, okay? So think of your eyes are kind of like the spotter, the sniper sitting, okay, on a platform trying to get the kill shot, okay? When my tongue doesn't sit on the palate, my upper and lower jaws are not connected as one unit, meaning my tongue should basically connect the lower jaw to the upper jaw like the clasp of a purse, or it should be like a chin strap connecting the two parts. When the two parts are connected by the tongue and there's negative pressure, meaning it's kind of like I swallow vacuum seal, these two halves become one, coupled with this hole in the middle that is vacuum sealed to protect the airway. But the most important thing is it's now a solid platform, okay? So the solid platform now gives me eyes that are on a level playing field. They're working off a stable base in order to gain intel as to what's out in front of me, what's on the chalkboard. Same thing. Stable base means that I have the ability to hear sounds properly, because when my tongue's not on the palate and I'm moving, my eyes are like basically like I'm in a truck that's romping through the woods. My ears are muffled because I have this romping and I'm trying to make out what I'm hearing, seeing, and this is where all this sensory goes sideways. So you talk about poor balance, rhythm, coordination. I'm trying to build skills off bad intel, coupled with the fact that everything I'm hearing and seeing is literally this altered version because I'm sitting in the back of a truck that's bouncing all the time. And my brain is like, what are we doing here? But if you look at like bite and sight, you look at like stomatic gnathic system and vision, hearing. Your hearing doc, your pediatrician, your eye doc is never going to talk about this. There is insane research. Kids with malocclusion, vision issues, kids with crossbites, balance, vision issues. I mean, it's dramatic. And no one talks about this stuff. Once again, it all comes back to airway. Okay? And then these kids go to see professionals that have good intentions, but they're essentially these modalities trying to help these kids are like trying to put out a kitchen fire and the house is on fire. This kid's waking up tired every day. They blew out their immune system. Their nervous system is hijacked and they never sleep. These kids need to get some sleep. They need someone to put their nervous system on ice, and they just need to let everything just chill out, simmer down before we can start to help them. We need to bring their brain, their nervous system, and their immune system to somewhat of a level playing field if we want to have a chance at giving these kids back the ability to do what nature has intended us to do. And, my reason for sharing this tonight is I have so many friends. I can tell you 4 of my clients in the gym right now have kids under 7 that literally they're currently dealing with specialists, trying to look for special schools, all for kids that have these issues. And 2 of the 4 right now, literally one just put an expander in his 5-year-old like 4 weeks ago. The other one is getting daughter expanded. She just turned 8 in about 3 weeks. But when I have a mom tell me the other day that she's like, yeah, my daughter literally at 8, once she had this done, like all of it went away. And these are messages I get all the time. And it's like, I'm not here pushing an agenda. Just check the box. If your kid's good, cool. All I'm saying is this. If there's boxes from a hierarchy of needs and I am trying to help kids in this world, this is one of the first boxes I'm checking every time. Because an airway that prevents us from sleeping, breathing, is one that prevents us from having a healthy immune system, a nervous system, growth factor, the ability to digest food, and everything else that starts to show up is often just a symptom of this not being treated. And I'm not saying that kids that deal with this stuff don't have other contributing factors. But it's like, if we're going to play the game of science and we are going to try to tease apart the contributing factors and variables that are impacting this, I think it's very important that we literally go after the things that make the most impact on all these systems and just rule it out early on. Because do that, you take a lot of possible causes off the table that I think a lot of people are just not accounting for. And I think has a lot to do with the fact that I just don't think people think that like 3, 4, 5-year-olds have serious sleep issues, breathing issues. And it's hard to conceive because, like, why would they? That's not normal, right? And it's like, it's become a normal because modern day, everything has been super overprocessed, and we've had so many little degradations that all these things just add up to just too much for the body to compensate for. And you used to be able to get it wrong in many ways and a kid would still be fine. And this is why, you've got 1 in 32, 1 in 33 boys nowadays that, is somewhere on the spectrum autistically. And it's more like, it just makes me sad because, like, this was me my whole life. And I think it's just important that we get this out there. And like I said, every person just hearing this, I think it's important that we just share this, because the more I think we start to, and the more we realize that there's really good solutions and pay attention to those that are dealing with these issues, and then what happens after we go in and try to attack these problems. I think it's game changing for a lot of kids, and I just wanted to share that. So thank you guys, and if you got any questions, feel free. Just always just trying to spread the word and just help little kids from suffering like I did.